that's all I want to do. I just want to be part of things and make cool stuff and trying to explore.
Hello and welcome to Where the Living Room Used to Be, a podcast about Rhode Island's music scene. Hey everyone, it's James. On this episode, I welcome multi-instrumentalist Ben Shaw. Not only does Ben play several instruments, he also writes and performs many different styles of music, from folk and jazz to classical and hip-hop. In our conversation, we cover his journey of being a musician that was barely accepted into the band at his middle school, to becoming a nominated composer in international classical music competitions. We also get into the release of his new songbook for his jazz album. I'm grateful to have been a part of this coming together, and you can pick up a copy starting on February 6th at the Parlor Jazz Jam in Providence, or by visiting benjaminshawmusic.com or my website, livingroomutb.com, shortly after that. Enjoy the episode, subscribe wherever you're listening right now to hear some upcoming bonus episodes with Ben, and please follow Where the Living Room Used to Be on Instagram to see some live photos, show flyers, and more from his time in music. Ben Shaw, thank you for joining this podcast. It's really cool to have you on. I'm a big fan of you. I'm a big fan of your music. You're doing a lot of exciting things that I'm really happy to share with all the listeners. So thanks again for being on.
Oh, dude, I mean, you know how much I love this show and how much I am just such a fan of this. So, I mean, I just wanted to come on mostly, like I was texting you the other day, just to try to take down people that you've had previously on the show. Yeah. So I'm here to spill the tea on Joe Potenza and Chrissy Stewart, Leland Baker. I'm coming for them. This is
going to be like an expose. We're not even going to really talk about you. It's just going to be
why?
Why? Behind the scenes, like what they're, what were they really like, Oh,
people can go to my site and read all about my music if they want. Yeah. But man, they want to know what I think. But I will say,
what is Joe Potenza really like? He can play bass.
But I mean, is he a good guy? I will say.
Or how does he take his coffee? He better not take it with extra, because that'd be weird,
Oh, he's one of those guys. He's the one that asked for was it Splenda? My dad has to ask for Splenda now because his doctor doesn't want him to have sugar. Okay. So it's like this whole weird order that he has to go through. But no, I actually wanted to say that one of the things that has been nice about this podcast is being able to listen to the people that I've been able to play with, like Joe, like Chrissy, and Joe, I have so much respect for because of his band Evening Sky, letting me sit in and play with them a bunch, it's just because I do a lot of stuff. Not a lot of people sometimes ask me to do things. I think because maybe they think I am busy, but the reality is that I keep busy because it's like no one's asking me to do stuff. So I just tend to do a lot. I tend to do a lot on my own because I just want to make things. So having them ask me, and then Chrissy has always been so incredible to watch what she does and all that stuff, and work on things with her. And Leland is just. He's just so cool, man. He's one of those guys that he's a sax player that, being a sax player myself, I watch, and he keeps me wanting to work more because of the stuff that he's doing and he's achieving, and the sound and the breadth of music that he's getting out of his horn makes me want to keep coming back. So,
but you did mention a lot of your info is on benjaminshawmusic.com, your website. But for those that are listening, can you just talk a little bit about where you grew up, your introduction to music, and what was your first instrument that you picked up?
Yeah, so I grew up in Portsmouth, Rhode Island, which is on Aquidneck Island in Rhode Island. So a lot of islands in there, but it's I like to say that it's just kind of like you could have found this town, I feel like, in anywhere like America. It's just kind of like in the middle of Iowa, it'd be there. It's very basic, very there's not a lot going on. It has a great school system, which is why people move there all the time. But we were just like a middle class family, just perfectly fine, just living there, going to school and everything. But my parents weren't really musicians, and so there was no real like music happening in the house or anything. But so it was just like my experience with kind of discovering music was very kind of natural. It's more nature than nurture, I think.
Okay.
It was very, I remember the first song I ever remember really hearing. I mean, and obviously this is, when I was baby, there's music playing around, and my parents had records and they'd have it. But the first song that like really, really, truly grabbed me was Elvis Presley's Heartbreak Hotel. And I just remember there was something about that. Well, since my baby left dinner, and it's just like, what? Like it just was so, there was nothing going on. There was like this weird attitude to him. And I mean, and he has, kind of this mystique about him that has, all these different things about Elvis. And so, but at the time I didn't really know all about that and about the history and stuff. And that was it. I just heard what was going on and it just grabbed me. And then from then on, it was just kind of little stuff. Okay. And then as I went, it was little things. It was like we were in a school assembly in third grade or something like that. And there was the band from the high school came in and they, showed all the instruments. Mm-hmm. And some guy played tenor sax, and it just seemed really, there was just something about it. They just stand up and it's like, oh, this is what an oboe sounds like. This is what a bassoon sounds like. Here's a tenor sax. And it was just something that like really grabbed me about that. So that's why I got obsessed with the saxophone early on. And I honestly wish I had like a better origin story with music, because it was just kind of like this cobbling together of different moments that don't really kind of make sense, like why I would be this obsessed with it. But yeah. I think it's just because there was just something about it, this mysterious nature to it. Yeah. And, my dad wasn't like a really big, he was a music fan, but he was into like Harry Chapin and Phil Collins and stuff like that. He wasn't into like the Beatles and Bob Dylan and stuff. So I got this like whole weird side of music. My early music life started in, young music classes. And then just, you could pick an instrument. I was like, well, I got to pick that saxophone. That's pretty cool. Well, how do I get to the saxophone? You got to do clarinet. And then I learned clarinet. But then when it was time to move up to the saxophone, I actually wasn't really good. So they told me that I couldn't do it. And then this girl, Crystal, she moved. I think her family was in the military, and they're like, okay, well, Crystal's moving. You want another shot? And that's okay. And that was it. I was like, okay, I auditioned one more time, and Miss Russell, my teacher, was like, yeah, you're still not good enough, but whatever, we need one. Wow. So, and you're the only one who wants to do it. So,
well, that's an interesting hurdle to kind of get over. But I mean, like what's coming to mind as you're speaking, though, is just that, I've talked to a lot of people, and myself definitely included. I can identify with just it not really making any sense why I play music. Like it just like, it is like there's something within me that will just continue to push on, continue to try to do new things, continue to learn. And it takes a long time. And in my case, it was not something that I just, picked up the drums and all of a sudden I could do what it was. Like years after playing, my parents were like, just so you know, I mean, we're happy with what you're doing, but when you first started, like you kind of sucked.
Trash.
Yeah. So like
they just gave it to you.
Yeah.
Well, dude,
there was something with it of like, I could do other things, and I don't know, I would just go back to the drums and just continue to try. And so there's something that is unique with what we do.
Man, I have never never been I've never been a natural, especially at music. I was never a natural at it. I had to, I don't want to, I hate, there's like a weird bravado when people say, that kind of phrase, well, I had to work to get to where I was. And I'm not saying that, but I did have to work really hard to just get to the level I'm at, which, if you ask me, isn't a really great level, but I mean, it's worked out in different ways. I've been able to write a lot of music and have a lot of fun, but I am always searching for more, but it takes me a long time to kind of get any concept or figure it out and to work on new instruments. It's very aggravating. The music is constantly telling me, please stop. You shouldn't be involved with this. And I just keep saying, no,
I'm gonna do it. Yeah.
I'm going to keep going. And music is like, no, you really don't. Please, we're convincing you. Yeah. But like saxophone, the one thing I had, and I think this is what got me through a lot of the, kind of the bummer part of being a saxophone player. Because when you start off playing a reed instrument, you sound like a squawking goose instantly. There's no way you just sound like this weird bird, and it's uncontrollable. It's loud. And as soon as I was able to kind of like wrangle that in, I had naturally, this was the one natural thing I had a pretty decent tone on saxophone. And that's what people would comment. Hey, that's what I always get. It's like, hey, your tone's really good. And I honestly think that was enough to just get me through to say, it's like, okay, well, I sound good. Now I just need to know how to like what notes and stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
And that was kind of what got me through.
Okay.
But
so
when
did you start playing guitar then? Like when did like other instruments get introduced into your repertoire of
my oeuvre or whatever? Guitar was a few years ago. I mean, I had buddies who I, some of my really good friends, like my buddy Rich and I, we would, he got a guitar and he would strum around, and his brother was really good on guitar. And I would be like, okay, well, let me try some things. So I would kind of learn a couple of chords and I would just kind of bang out some stuff on the strings. And then eventually we would just start playing like folk songs together because we shared a lot of the same love and stuff of music. And because of me being a bit more serious with it and studying the theory and all that and kind of knowing what was going on, I was able to sort of make something happen. But then I wasn't really serious until I want to say 2015, I think, when I was, we can talk about that later. This other band I was in broke up, had been together with that band for a long time, and it just kind of ended semi abruptly in kind of a weird way. But I was lost. I needed something to play, and I had all this music, and I had a love for folk music and rock and roll and all that stuff, and singer-songwriter material, just kind of writ large. And so I was just like, okay, well, it'll be easier to play by myself. So I learned how to play the guitar the way that I played guitar out of necessity rather than, I mean, I love the guitar. I always wanted to play the guitar, but I thought everyone else plays the guitar, so let me learn the bass, and that didn't work. Let me learn the banjo. Wasn't good at that. And then finally I was like, you want to learn guitar, just focus on guitar. And still I didn't do that. I just kind of learned enough of what I wanted to know to be able to play the songs that I play and like improvise and make up stuff. So if you ask me to play other people's guitar stuff, it's probably not happening. But if you ask me to play my thing, I can do that for you.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Which is sad. One of my things this year is to really focus on learning the instrument more, because I have such a deep respect and love for it. But the fretboard is still kind of a mystery to a large degree. And the finger, the kind of the way you move around. I just, when you're looking at something, especially any instrument, and you can hear something in it calling to you. I know this sounds like mystical and weird maybe, but you look at a piano and you say, I know that there's Rachmaninoff in there, but I don't have the keys right now. How do I, and it's just, if you're like me, it's just like, I just want to know how to get that out of the instrument. And then you start to hear different sounds. Like I hear a song in there, but I don't know how to get that. And that takes learning an instrument, sitting down and actually learning how to manipulate the instrument in a way to get that sound that you want.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can attest to that as well. I mean, I was, I guess, kind of lucky that when I first started playing, it was learning from Dave Grohl. So it was not like, super technical. So but it was that type of thing of like, I want to be able to play this Nirvana song and then I'd be able to do it. So it was like, check, like, not, so what was the like first recorded music you did, or first, I guess, I mean, maybe it's the same thing, but first band that you played in?
Yeah, we played in I had a couple of different bands in high school, but it was kind of all the same band. It's just like different names because it's like, oh, well, this is not working. This is not cool enough anymore. We had a band because again, I didn't play guitar or anything. I played saxophone. So what I'd have to do is we'd have to like find other people, me and this other guy, another buddy of mine, John, we'd have to like find other people to play. And it was like, okay, well, because he played trombone. So we always had to find like the rhythm section.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, well, then it became a group songwriting thing. But we had a band named, the first band was called Sullen Vertigo. So very, very high school. I like the shaking of the head, like, oh yeah, no, that made sense. No, it was awful. Sullen Vertigo. It was cool though. We played like at the time we kind of played like this real heavy stuff. The guitarist that we were working with, this kid Sam, was wicked good. He was wicked good. Ended up going to Berkeley, really great player. Mm-hmm. But he knew how to play Cowboys from Hell by Pantera.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And so I was like, dude, yes. It was like, that was all I needed. We actually covered that at the high school battle of the bands. And I was the lead singer because no one else wanted to. And I secretly wanted to, but I didn't have a good voice. But I could do that over the line where we stand tall. It's like, I could scream into a microphone just fine. But that was one of those moments where I kind of learned like, oh, I really want to do this. I want to be the guy up front. Like, I like this. Mm-hmm. It was actually our first gig was at Flo's Clam Shack in Middletown. When you're going down to the beach. I don't know who got this gig for us. I don't know how we got it because we barely had any songs. Mm-hmm. I think we were just mostly making it up. We were, jamming. We were all in jazz band. So we sort of knew what was going on, but it really wasn't good. So somehow we got that and we played on the upstairs, shoved against this, like, there were 7 of us. And this is the plight of me and bands being the sax players, because if you're a horn player, well, you need another horn player unless it's like a jazz combo. So it was always like these 6-piece, 7-piece bands. Oh, okay. And we're shoved into this tiny little corner. And I don't know why I didn't quit after that, because it was a horrible gig. The smell of like fried clams and everything is just like surrounding you in this like fish tank, like I'm butted up against this like fish tank, just shoved in with like 6 other guys. But yeah, we would get like a couple of gigs here and there, but we played that. We eventually changed our name to Black Orpheus because we liked the jazz tune.
Okay.
Actually, it was funny. Kevin at AS220, he's one of the sound guys at AS220. Yeah. He's Math the band. Yeah, yeah. I was telling him the other day, like a while ago, that because we struck up a good friendship from my several times doing things at AS220, and I used to run a jazz series there called Is This Jazz? A bi-monthly concert series. And so we're very friendly now. And I told him that I think one of my high school bands opened up for Math the Band in a church basement, and he like knew exactly what it was.
Oh, really?
Oh, dude, it was so cool. And the even cooler thing is because we struck up this friendship, he let me play on one of their records. I did some horn parts for Math the Band's Flange Factory 5.
Yeah.
So it was like this weird dude, I like that is, it's so much energy, so fun. So it's such a great record.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess, I mean, you just kind of brought it up, and I did want to talk about some of the people that you accompany as well, because you do have a long list. I mean, you just brought up, being on the Math the Band's album. But can you talk about some of the other albums that you've been on, just since you brought it up?
One of the bummer things about being a sax player is that you're kind of like the last addition to a lot of these bands. Like everyone needs a bass player, everyone needs a drummer, but not a lot of people need a saxophone player.
Oh, okay.
But one of the cool thing about it is that when you do get asked, you're like coming in to like add a little something.
Yeah.
And everyone treats you
texture.
like, right. It's like, oh my God, we were like, whoa, you're blowing it. It's like, you kind of get to be the hero in a way. And
it does. It matters. It's like, oh, that was this was good. But then that little saxophone part will just, pull it together. Yeah.
Oh, dude. And it's a lot of it's just like kind of making it up. So there's not really, it's because people want you to come in and they'll say, for instance, like Chrissy, I played on her song Preacher's Daughter, which is a really cool tune. And it's just this like real nice, like kind of quiet jazz thing. And she wanted me to play Barry on it because she knew that I played baritone sax and tenor sax and alto sax and all that stuff. And so I just showed up. It was this really cool recording studio that she had set up at this like artist's house on Jamestown, this beautiful view. And I just came in, they put a microphone in front of me and they're just like, okay, we're going to play it. And I just improvised just these horn lines just over and over and over and over again. And at a certain point it'd be like, okay, now let's try it with like this weird thing over the microphone or over a speaker or something. And then I played tenor, and then I had a broken clarinet that I was able to like figure out just enough of like a blues scale on it that was in key to play. And that was it. So it was like a quick maybe a couple of hours of just doing it, laying down these parts, figuring out what works. And then I walk away and they do all the hard work. It was the same thing with like, the thing that was kind of cool with like the Math the Band stuff was they had pre-written parts that they wanted.
Oh, okay.
So all I had to do was just kind of play to that, figure it out via the recording. Okay, this is what they want. This is what the MIDI horns are doing. I'll play that. And so I had to figure that out and just record it at home at my own studio at my own time. And just like the mic I'm using now to talk to you is the same one. You just plug it in, and it was it's really fun because it's the band The Deer Hunter. Yeah.
Gavin from Groovus Malt played in them for a long time. And
he's in with them. Casey and Nick Crescenzo. Nick Solicito is this bass player that I had worked with before. And he plays bass with The Deer Hunter. And they, for their Act 5 record, they had written these horn parts. And again, because I played baritone sax, they needed these parts recorded, and they had actually like written them out. So I went to Nick's place and we recorded them. And it's just these weird moments that you get into when you're a horn player, where, it's these kind of random bits that you're just like, I don't know where I'm going to fit in. And so you just play and you record, but it all ends up kind of working out in the end, where I've never had really a bad experience with just kind of sitting in on people's records. I really like doing it because I can just do it from home sometimes, or again, you just go in and you get to be the hero. But it's
can you talk about working with Evening Sky?
Yeah, we've got 2 albums together that I've worked with Evening Sky on. They honestly, like I had gone to a couple of shows. I had played with Joe and Gino, Joe Potenza, the bass player, and Gino Rosati the guitar player. I had played with them at like jams and stuff, or like seen them at gigs and everything. With jazz, you just kind of see people around at different gigs, and you kind of get to know people. And so we just would talk or whatever, and then they started playing with Evening Sky. This thing started up, and I've always loved the idea of creating music that's at the intersection between like this kind of roots music, kind of like Americana folk and jazz, like that kind of intersects that. And so I went to a gig of theirs and I was just blown away. I just couldn't believe it's like, these guys are doing it. Yeah. They kind of have like the Bill Frisell, Brian Blade and the Fellowship kind of thing that I'm always going for. And they just kind of naturally do it. It's those two, and then Chris Brooks on pedal steel and Eric Hastings on drums. And the four of them just have this really great sound together. And I just kept going to the gigs and honestly, like telling them how much I liked what they were doing. Yeah. And then when I recorded the jazz album, a couple of the tunes on there are in that similar vein. And Joe Potenza listened to it when I released it. And he's like, you know what? I think you'd fit in with what we're doing. So he just, that was it. It was just like, they heard that I had a similar idea. I had a similar concept to them. And it was like, let's work together. And like I said at the beginning, I am honestly always looking to work with people in some way. I really love just making music. That's all I want to do. I just want to be part of things and make cool stuff and trying to explore. And so when they asked me to do it, it was like, oh, this is obviously what I want to do. And so I wrote a couple of tunes for one of the records, and we used some like previous written material that I had for some of it. And so it was just nice to kind of play with them. Yeah. Yeah.
And I played in a band with Chris Kelly. We played in Umbrella Co for a little bit. And I know you have, you played with him as well.
Oh, yes. Yes. With Mauricio. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
That is a, it used to be Bellerophon and now it's Mao. And that is really cool because again, it's just, he had some parts that he was doing, but that he knew that he wanted done. But mostly that gig too is just kind of like making it up. And it's a like 80s vibe. Yeah. Like this sort of like new wave vibe, kind of music that I like, but I don't make myself, but would love to know how to make or be a part of. Yeah. So again, when you get to be asked to do this stuff, because as we'll talk about, like I have a lot of different types of music that I explore. I just like trying new things and seeing what I can come up with and how I can apply the lessons of other music. So having him do this stuff, it was nice to scratch that itch because I've never really been able to do it authentically on my own. Yeah. So when you ask me to just,
you can perform it as someone else, like as an accompanist to someone else, but yeah.
Tell me to do a schmaltzy kind of 80s sax riff on something. Oh, dude, I'm there. It's cool. It's so much awesome. Fun.
For those that aren't familiar with you, you have recorded a classical album, a jazz album, a folk album, have many folk singles, like you've recorded under your own name, under Ben Shaw, recorded all of these different styles of music. What motivates you to do those, different styles of music, and like, do they mean different things to you in different ways, or is it like what is it with pursuing all of those styles?
When I went to the University of Rhode Island, I wanted to be in music composition because I was a Boy Scout and Eagle Scout, James. Sorry, I don't want to. I'm a full-fledged Eagle Scout, but one of the merit badges we were doing was music, and you had to write a song, just like a simple song. And I wrote this piece. It was the first time I had been asked to write anything. So it was like, okay. And I was just sitting there trying to think of something. I had my saxophone. I kind of played something, and all of a sudden this spark of like a melody came up, and I heard for the first time, like music that I had never really heard before. I was like, okay, let me follow that thread. And I wrote it down. And there's a couple of times that this happened, but this was probably in its like most pure form, where the song was formed in my head and I was able to transfer it to paper perfectly how I heard it.
Okay.
And it was like some sort of weird lightning rod just like shot through me. It was like all of a sudden it just revealed to me, like, you can think of something and just create it, and it's there. And it was perfectly formed, and it was just such a rush. So then you go to when I'm in college and I'm looking for my major, and I remember that feeling of like what it was like to write songs. And when I was in that high school band, when I was writing these, because we had horn players, so no one else wanted to do a lot of the work. And I really wanted this thing to happen. So I was writing lyrics and I started writing the horn parts. Well, then it was like time to pick a major. I'm like, well, composition. I really like doing that. And I have all these horn parts. I was kind of toying with performance, but I just wasn't up to the level that I needed to be, because my practice was really bad. Like my way of practicing was really poor, and I just didn't practice a lot. So as an instrumentalist, I was really behind the bar, but I just felt like I had something with music, composition. So I brought them to this teacher. You kind of had to do this like quote unquote tryout, which wasn't really a tryout. It was like, hey, just show me that you want to do it and we'll let you. But I had all these horn parts, and he's like, oh, this is actually pretty good. And so Joe Perillo was my first composition teacher in the jazz department. And then through the composition department, you had to enroll in a year of classical composition lessons.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, I don't want to do that. Come on. I just want to write jazz, man. Let's just write jazz.
Yeah.
But then I started studying with this woman, Eliane Auburndam, and I would write a couple of things and she would actually say like, oh, this is pretty good. I'm like, oh, okay. So I could really, then I'm like starting to make the connections, like, wait a minute. Like there were a couple of jazz guys that were writing classical music that were having pretty good success in writing better music. And it was just like, it started to lay the groundwork that, okay, you can just be part of things. You can, if you want to write it, you can just sort of do it. If you just apply yourself a little bit to it. The mechanics of Western music are largely the same. We have 12 notes. That's all we get. How we organize them is, in how we utilize them and the harmonies that we get out of these scales or whatever, however we design these things, that's, a part of the language of speaking in jazz or classical music or folk music or whatever, but it's all the same kind of stuff. And so then later on in college, I started getting into hip hop through my brother. He was working at a record store and had this friend who showed him a bunch of stuff, and he showed me Atmosphere's Sevens Travels. And it would just like completely change my brain. I'm like, oh, you can do that too. Because I was such a music snob, James, in high school. I was like a real idiot. Like I just, it was all towny rock to me. Like that's what was cool. Secretly liking jazz and class. I mean, jazz was cool because I was in jazz band, and being a jazz musician, I always wanted to be a jazz musician. but it's like classical music. I had a love for that. And I just had all this love for music. And so you get to college and you meet all these weirdos who also have this love for music. And so when I was getting into hip hop, I found the Soulquarians and Erykah Badu, and I found D'Angelo and The Roots most of all. And then I was like, The Roots, okay, I want to do this now.
Yeah.
Because like it's a whole band playing hip hop. And so then we formed a band called Milkbread. I found a bunch of guys and we formed this band called Milkbread. And I was like, we're going to play this like kind of neo soul stuff. What ended up happening though, is that everyone were like these different musicians. Like the drummer, Dylan Seavey, the drummer, is like kind of a rock musician. Brendan Moore, the keyboard player, is, you know, a jazz musician, but he's also like really into like the Doors and stuff. Dylan Lagama, the bass player, he was doing like slap stuff on electric, but he was also in the jazz program. So it's like all these, and we're just all these different people that like these different things. And we made this stuff that was kind of like rap, kind of like funk, kind of rock, kind of indie stuff.
Okay.
And I think it was just like this meeting of, I had this idea of what I wanted to do. And eventually I think we got there. There's a song, if you listen to it, called Contiguous. It was the last thing we ever released. That, if you listen to Milkbread's Contiguous, that is like the purest form of what I had always wanted to do.
The side-by-side motion is messing with your devotion. Float alone on the ocean, but which hand is holding? A wave hits and splits the ship in the half. So you survive the crash, there's a crack in the glass. Sand spilling out too fast, and watch the grains pass. And the pile that's left gets surpassed with each mile you last. But you smile as you take out the trash and stack it on the other bags of passion. You grab all the door handles, but can't handle the scandal. Picking bronze or handles, sitting or standing all over family. Animals can be cannibals, but so was Hannibal. So try to understand the intangibles. Decide are you a hero or a vandal. Some say semantics while they confuse their answers. But many think it's what empire you were blessed with. But then again, falling 3 times is a hell of a hat trick. So pay attention to the hand you dealt. And when you lay a card down, remember how the ink fell. This choice slips from your fingers with every move you embrace.
We're always told that we can only kind of be one thing as musicians. You know, it's like,
okay,
you got to be the jazz musician. You got to be the classical musician. You're going to be a folk musician. People want to just kind of give you the one thing because it's easier for your career to just do the one thing. But I mean, if I look back and I'm like, well, I like all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Why would I stop doing this? Why would I not want to keep making, you know, classical music? I love playing with that. And jazz is so incredible for so many different reasons that are too innumerable to kind of go through here. But I think, you know, through that, I got everything else, really. Jazz just kind of gave me everything else. But I've always wanted to do that. But simultaneously, I'm like, well, I want to write folk songs. So it's like, it really just comes down to, because I'm just so compelled to try to find my voice, and I'm just trying to figure out what it is. And it's this constant search to find what that is. And I think it's maybe contained in all these different parts.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I can sort of make this amalgam, weird chimera of something, that might be me. I might actually find what I'm trying to say. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's working, but damn it, I'm trying.
Yeah.
You know?
No, but I appreciate it. It's something that is way beyond what I can do, but I think it's inspirational just because there's probably some other people that are facing those same sort of challenges where they're like, well, you need to pick something, you know, if you're going to do this, you need to write folk songs and do that. I mean, I guess I don't want to speak for people, but it seems possible that stuff is happening where they're not looking at just going and being like, well, I do want to explore these other types of things. And it does seem, maybe not unique with being the songwriter. Cause I mean, I've played a lot of different styles of music from,
Well, exactly.
hip hop to like really like loud punk stuff to like whisper folk stuff when I played with Marissa Nadler and like, a lot of different things. And no one's like, that's weird, James. Why do you play, in a hardcore band and also in this like whispered folk music, like it doesn't, but it seems that it's, there aren't a lot of people that are, I'm a songwriter and here is, multiple different styles of music that are currently recording at that same time, so I just appreciate what you're doing. Just, the music is really good, but just for the fact that you just are pursuing all of these things, I hope that some other people will see that and pay attention and do that themselves, so that they don't have to stifle their own interests.
That's kind of what I hope. I mean, I think a lot of people don't do it because honestly, it's a bit of a career killer in a way. It's like, because you can't say like, if I'm going to release this song, like we're going to, for instance, in April, I'm going to release this EP of singer-songwriter material. Yeah. But in February, you and I are working on this sheet music book for the jazz stuff, for the jazz album I released, but it's all under my name. So it's, part of me is like, am I asking too much of people to jump around and say, like when they see a release, if you follow me on Spotify or whatever, you see a release and it's all of a sudden this weird classical music, you're like, okay, well, I guess he's not doing that anymore. Unfollow. But it's like, no, it's like the stuff you like will come back eventually, but this is also me. Yeah. And I want to say it took a lot of people like giving me time and helping me. I'm not a man on my own island. I didn't create this ship that I sail upon, but I am a product of many people's helping hands and guidance. Mm-hmm. But it still did take me a long time to figure out like, well, what am I doing with classical composition? I mean, the reason I started writing classical stuff again was because I started taking lessons because I wanted to write classical music again. So I was taking piano lessons at the time. And I asked my teacher for like a reference. Mm-hmm. And he led me to this woman, Ala Cohen in Boston. And she's like a prodigy when she was a kid at the Moscow Conservatory, like really deep, like heavy kind of out there quasi-tonal music. And she took me on and I've been taking lessons with her. But when I started, it was just kind of like, I'm figuring it out. And I didn't really take to it. I mean, she says that I was pretty, she does a good job of like pumping me up, and like telling me that a lot of the stuff I write is good, but she also knows how to give out like really good. I would just say like that. Yeah, I think people want to do things, but they feel like if I'm not great at it, then there's no reason to. And my whole thing, and I know that because that is me. I know that I spend a lot of time telling myself not to do things and to not pursue stuff because you're going to be shit. That was what I saw in myself, that I'm not good enough. You're never going to be good enough at what you do. So, just give up. But again, the audacity of like, but I just really want to play music. Mm-hmm. And so I constantly have this fight where it's like, no, just stop. It's not worth it. You're not good. And I think through the sheer like whittling down of myself and my self-confidence, I just eventually kind of scabbed up enough to say, it's like, no, I'm good enough at these things. And I know I got there. So I don't have to keep telling myself not to do things. If I want to do them, just go out and try. Yeah. And so absolutely. just eventually after a while, it was like, that's why I don't really separate it and that's why we were talking earlier before we got on about naming stuff, because I had a problem with Ben Shaw because there's so many different Ben Shaws on Spotify and stuff. And mm-hmm. So I thought about changing my name, but I worked so hard at developing my own idea about being okay with who I was. in my own identity as who I am, that it seemed like I'd kind of be spitting in my own face in a way to not use my name. And if I went about making this music and didn't just put it all out under my name, if I came up with like a name that I thought would sound more classical, or if I was like trying to, when I was doing the singer-songwriter name, it's like, well, I want people to know me as a jazz musician, which I do, but I also want people to just know me as a singer-songwriter and as a writer in general. It's like, but it won't work. But I was just like, well, but I want to do these things. And so I have the benefit of no one really right now is like paying attention as much. So if I do things and I kind of mess up and I have to take stuff off Spotify or whatever, because it like doesn't fit into the algorithm or whatever, I can do that. But that's not going to, but why stop myself when I am so utterly compelled to do it all? I would rip my face off if I didn't just do it, because it would just be it would be this unstoppable want inside. And it would gnaw at me like a good song gnaws at the inside of your brain.
Yeah. But can you talk about your classical album that recently came out? I mean, you just kind of brought up some of the lessons that you've been taking with that, that came out in December, and I mean, I think it's a great record. I mean, to be honest, classical is not my forte at all. I don't blame you. It is. It's an interesting record, though. It's very like emotive. Like there's just a lot of the contemporary classical that's coming out. Like they're sort of score type feel to it, but like a planned progression, correct? Where it starts with some piano to flute to, can you talk a little bit more about the theory behind that and how the record came together? Sure.
Yeah. So that, the album itself stemmed from, I needed to do recordings, of these pieces for, competitions that I was submitting to. So in the classical field, one of the things that you can do, there's this really good infrastructure. I mean, good is a relative term because some people hate these competitions because of different reasons that we won't go into, but there's this really good base of competitions that you submit your music to. And so like I said, I've been taking lessons with this woman up in Boston, and we've been working on this stuff. And she just, I went in there and we started writing. I wrote the first prelude, and then we went on and she's like, okay, that's good. And we were working on other piano music, and she had me start on the string quartet, and that went really well. And we finished that, and we just kept moving on through these different pieces. And as we would move on through the pieces, she'd say like, okay, we have to submit to competitions now because we need to get your name out there. We need to do all that stuff. We need to start playing in the realm of classical music. In the sort of like structure of it. Yeah. So
and you have gotten some nods from those competitions as correct as well.
Yeah. Like, so there's one called like the IBLA Foundation, IBLA, that's sort of like an international based competition. Then there's also the American Composers. There's the American Prize, which is like this American based prize. And so I've for my string quartet, I was a finalist, I think, in the American Prize, and then I got
that's awesome.
Distinguished as like one of the most distinguished musicians, and like one of the I haven't won yet, but I get pretty decent high marks, thankfully. Which is good because like then it means you can keep going.
That's great. It's great. Yeah.
Through those lessons and everything, we just kept working on music, and I had these recordings, and when I was recording the preludes, I had this pianist, Constantine Finehouse, and I was talking to him. He's like, dude, why don't you just like release these? Why don't you just put them out? I'm like, really? You think so? They're kind of, because they're recorded, but they're recorded for competitions. And so it's not like, I mean, the musicians are amazing musicians, but it's not like this was like the most high quality recording that you could buy. I didn't spend hours. It was like we went into the studio we had like 2 maybe 3 hours to record the string quartet in its entirety. Yeah. And we recorded it in chunks, and then the engineer just like slapped it together and did a really good job. But the piano like took a couple of days, but we only really had like a little amount of time. This was actually a good lesson for me, because I've been learning now that it's like classical music. It's just because I thought like you have to be perfect. Mm-hmm. And I just don't think people give a crap anymore about if like the sonic quality of something is absolutely perfect. I care, mm-hmm. but like the average person is going to listen to it and is going to focus on the music rather than well, the piano isn't as good as maybe you heard it in your brain. Yeah. So I just decided like
I just picked up on the like the percussive elements of what you were writing, and that it was this album is building to something that there's like emotion. I mean, the names of the songs are emotions, but that's what I really picked up. Yeah, it definitely wasn't like honestly, it never even crossed my mind of the sonic quality of what the recordings were. It was just like, what is Ben trying to do with this? Or no, not like, but just like, no, but I like
the
you piano
saying, like, what is
has
he
that,
trying to do?
I don't even know how to describe, like sort of disjointed, percussive things, and it was like, oh, this is cool, and then it builds up to the string quartet pieces that kind of bring things together, so where the preludes are just these sort of snippets that but they lead to something. So I was trying to understand more of the concept and what was going into it, but it definitely wasn't I get that. Of the like the quality of what that was. I didn't even think of it, or I mean
the great thing about what you said is like you focused on the music, and that's what's important, is that people get what I'm going for in all this stuff. For the singer-songwriter stuff that I have up there now, like I had my buddy Matt come over with his travel gear, and we recorded like all those singles at my house, my old house, which, it worked, but it's, you're looking at like, we had like guys in the house, was this like unfinished portion where it was like all this kind of like wood. There was no electricity over there, so we had to run electricity from the other side of the house, which had power. But we recorded in the kind of this unfinished sort of exposed wood and wall and stuff, and it just had this vibe to it. But we were just using like whatever he had, and he's got good gear, but it was all like kind of on the fly. And what proved to me about that in that experience, it was like the thing that we kept saying was like, it's the vibe. The vibe has to be a certain thing when we're recording this. And if we get that, boom, we're good. Like we've accomplished it, and that will come through. And I think if you listen to a lot of those singles, you kind of get what's going on there.
Yeah. But, well, I'd love to talk about your singer-songwriter stuff.
Sure.
I mean, you're bringing up those singles, but you also do have that EP that's slated to come out in a few months.
The one coming out in April, the singer-songwriter stuff, that's going to be a lot of the singles that we recorded in the house. And a couple of them are actually songs that we recorded during sort of the early summer of the pandemic in each other, like in our own houses or whatever, and had Matt kind of cobble it together. But so the story about like that EP that's coming out in April was, again, I had all these things I wanted to say. I wanted to keep making music, but I needed a way to do it. And I've always loved folk music, and I've always loved singer-songwriter stuff, and I like the thing I like about singer-songwriter music is that it's such a weirdly all-encompassing genre. It's like when people say jazz or even classical, you're really not doing service to it. Like when I say, bluegrass, I have a general idea of what I'm getting with bluegrass. Mm-hmm. When I say jazz, I could be getting Dave Brubeck. I could be getting Robert Glasper. I could be getting Sun Ra. I could be getting Lester Young. Yeah. I could be getting Fletcher Henderson. Like I could be getting all these different things, like Artemis. I could be getting Terry Lynn Carrington. Like you could just be all over the map. And singer-songwriter, it was like, okay, so it's like I can do anything with that, and it was nice. And it was just going to be me and a guitar. So when I started writing songs, I would just kind of mess around and come up with stuff and really focus on lyrics and the song and the song. And it was a really good, as I went, I kind of like went through all these different identities. Do I want to kind of be like one of these kind of like hard driving guys? Do I want to be there? What do I want to be? And I came across like guys like Tom Waits.
Yeah.
And he's my North Star, truly. But him, and then John Prine, and then Jason Isbell, and like kind of these guys that are, and Sturgill Simpson. And it was like, okay, let me kind of aim for this sort of thing. And so I started kind of writing in that sort of singer-songwriter vein.
Yep.
And was really working on just making it acoustic, because I figure if I just focus on making like acoustic music and writing these songs, that'll be fine. And I worked on them for a couple of years, just playing them because my guitar playing was real bad. And so I would have people play with me. It was awful, but I was working on songs, and I was working on the craft. And so I got a couple that I really liked. And finally I kind of got the gumption again to just say like, well, if not now, then when?
And though it's hard to see you in any other light than the one that hangs above your bed, and although this dawn may be brighter, makes it easier to hide behind your sense of righteous sympathy. Sarcasm seemed like your domain, but with each joke your interest wanes for me.
When I was recording the jazz album, you have to record using all these, I wrote up all these charts, which had the music, like just the melodies and the chord symbols. And that's what we would use, like when you're on when we do gigs and stuff, or like the Real Book. If there's any jazz musicians out there, it's like a chart, a lead sheet, a chart in the Real Book or whatever. It's just the basic stuff to communicate the music at its most basic form. Mm-hmm. And that's what we use in jazz music. And I thought, like, I don't want to make a CD because I have Milkbread CDs, 700 of them still at my parents' house.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't want to make a CD for this one. But I love notation, and I think it's the perfect way to communicate this, and just specifically this Western music that we're working with, like this Western system that we're working with the 12 notes and all that stuff. This kind of notated music, the way that we have notation, it's like a perfect way to communicate with people. Mm-hmm. And so I thought, like, let's put together all the charts that we used, and we'll sell that. And we had been talking about like collaborating on something, you and I.
And I remember
like,
also,
let's do this. Yeah.
Which also was really intriguing to me was releasing music in a plastic free way of like, how could we do this, and then there's some other people that are doing some interesting things, but yeah, it definitely made sense to do this book of charts for the jazz album that you put out. But yeah, that was just really interesting. And I haven't really seen too many people do it in that fashion. Like there are different ways where you can release the album with a t-shirt or anything that, Matt the band does energy drinks and boxes of cereal or whatever, so Kevin's doing some really cool things, man. But that was just a very interesting conversation to have. And just it opened my eyes to a lot more of what people are doing with regards to plastic free music releases, so. Well,
and it's like the thing I like about the notation in the chart book is that now people can read along. They can see what we saw. They not only see that, but they also can bring the music to their session. If they have like a quartet or a quintet or whatever, and they're just like, hey, let's play these charts. Yeah. They get to put them in their voice. We, the Is This Jazz concert series I did at AS220, we would do a yearly jam of all original music because AS220 is famously like all original, no covers. So we would compile like these like bunches of charts from all the different guys. And I remember once listening to a group, I wasn't even playing at the time. They played my song Dia, which is the first track on the Jazz album, but they played it in this really weird, like Latin Afro-Cuban way that I had never heard it. And it was like, that's wow. Cool. Yeah. Okay. Cause I'd play it as a ballad. And it was just, that's what I want to do with like this kind of notated music. Same thing with like all the classical stuff or like the singer-songwriter stuff. I love the idea of people just playing it and bringing their own voices to it, because being a composer that's part of the dream, really, is that other people, is that I have a vision for this. I'm putting it out there. This is the music that was born out of me, and I give it unto you, and you like listen to it and doeth what you will. But the great thing about like having the sheet music is that you can play it, you can experience it. Yeah. And that was what was so intriguing about like doing the chart book. Plus we also did, to make it more special, I put some poems in there because I try to write a poem a day for the last couple of years. Again, just like constantly doing stuff. I don't, sometimes I have to play catch up, but so a lot of those poems I was like, some of them really fit what I wanted to do with the music and the charts. So we threw those in there. Yeah. But yeah, like, well, and the reason I bring up the poems too is because one of them was when we were talking about like putting it together, like at the beginning, I have that poem at the front where if you get the book, it's just about being unencumbered and about this fear of wanting to be better, but just doing, and like this mantra that kind of served throughout. So it was kind of fun to put this mantra that I had that kind of served me throughout the process of putting together the guys and the album and all this stuff. And because jazz music's really hard, and jazz music, and I've always wanted to be a jazz musician because I think you technically are, but yeah, but continue. Thank you. Yeah. That is one of my fears, is that because I've always wanted to, because the thing that is so intoxicating about jazz, or, in quote unquote jazz, because jazz is so many different things, but I'm going to refer to it as jazz because that's what people know it best as. But guys like I remember hearing in college about like Bill Evans' idea about jazz was that jazz is not a music, it's a process. And that really lit up my brain because, again, like all this different kind of music, I could just apply the jazz process to it. And it was like a way of communicating with, the different language, figuring out the language of whatever you're trying to do and working within the framework of that and thinking about it in different ways. And the great thing about that whole idea, that whole concept, is that it let me do anything I wanted to. I could play around with all different stuff and be my own person. But jazz, again, quote unquote, as this genre or whatever, is really friggin' tough. It is hard. It is like mentally taxing. It's physically tough to like manipulate the instrument in the way to get it. And you're always improvising, and you have to listen, and you have to know what you're doing. And so me not being as good as I wanted to be, it's like, okay, I'm not at the level that I need to be, because I need to be deserving of the title of jazz musician. I am so far from being worthy of it that I'll never get there. And so I finally figured out, like, as I got older, it's like, well, if you think you're never going to get there, then what does it even mean to you? You're making music that you like, you're enjoying it, and you want to make it, just make it.
Yeah,
it was
that's really what matters. So.
It was as stupid as that, to just be like, just do it, guy. Just do it. So
come on, guy.
Come on. Come on. Get off your high horse.
Yeah. Get over here. You know,
but it was really like that, where it was like, just, I had to eventually say, it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. People probably aren't going to call me a jazz musician. People probably aren't going to call me a singer-songwriter. I just want people to enjoy the music, to get something out of it, and maybe in some way, I think the best part about being a musician, about being an artist, is that our kind of core duty, as I see it, and this other people have different ways of thinking about it, our core duty is to take life as other people see it and reflect it back to them in higher contrast and with more detail and more nuance. Because people look at sunsets, or they look at clouds, or they look at, like, when they're walking through a city, they just see how the rain kind of lays on the ground, lays on the sidewalk, and they see how the street light hits it and it bounces off, and they see a guy reading a paper, and they're looking at it and they're saying, there's something here. There's something that I'm just not getting it. But there's something beautiful about it. But it takes somebody like a Robert Frank or a Vivian Meyer to take a picture of that and to give it back to them and say, see this is what you saw on that day in the rain. And this is how beautiful it was. And for somebody to give them sort of that, okay, give them the permission to say, like, yes, this is what I was seeing. And this is kind of in all its glory. Because people see the beauty of life, but they really lack the ways of talking about it. It gives them permission to feel that on their own, mm-hmm. which to me is like, that's the reason why you do any of it. So mm-hmm. if no one says that I'm that I'm this or that or whatever, as long as they just, I don't know, get something out of it. Mm-hmm. And if they don't, then there's plenty of other people that are doing it that they'll get something out of it. But mm-hmm. I would like a couple minutes of their time, and to just try to show them something, and show them that they're beautiful too. Yeah.
With the book, it's going to be released on February 6th at the Parlor Jazz Jam, which is something that you host now. You've taken the reins of that. So definitely recommend checking that out. Head down February 6th to, celebrate this release. You have, can you talk about what you have planned for that particular evening? And then just talk about the Jazz Jam in general
February 6th, what we're going to do is what we usually do at these jams is as the house band, I run the house band. It's me, Daniel on saxophone, me on saxophone, Daniel Hill on keys, Tom Casale on the bass, and then Jim Nordhill on drums. And we open the night playing a couple of tunes of our own material. Then we start bringing up people. They come up, they can sit in with the house band. We rotate players in and out, just playing tunes from the jazz, oeuvre or whatever, just from whatever they want to play. We just come up and we just jam. And then at the end of the night, we might play a tune. So what we're going to do February 6th is we're going to release the book. It's going to be available for purchase there. It's a limited run, only 50 copies available. If you buy it, you do get a digital download of the album. I have to print out the labels and stuff, but it's a limited run. It's first edition. They're going to be all hand signed and numbered and everything. So it's a special thing. And we're going to play 2 tunes up front from that book. And then we're going to close at the end with another one of those songs. And so you get to hear the material, but the Jazz Jam is something that the Parlor was doing for a while, and it was going very well. But I when things started closing down, it obviously had to end. So when things started opening up, I kept bugging Gregory at the parlor. I'm like, hey man, I know they used to do this thing. Let me run it. Cause I'm not confident about a lot of stuff. Like there are a few things though that I am confident about. I'm confident that I can cut a hedge really, really well.
Yeah.
I know I do a good job with hedges. And I know that I'm a good host for stuff like that, because I want you to have a good time. I want you to feel welcome. I want you to feel like you can be a part of this, because when I was going to jams, that was the most important thing, because I was very wary of it and I was very scared and I didn't feel good, but I was so welcomed by people like Mivit Threats and Joe Potenza and Richard Hunley and all these like older guys who would like play and like let me sit in, and they give me props and like give me advice and stuff. And I just want to kind of use the jam at the parlor for that. This community, it's not, some jams are like really like, we're going to like cut each other down. We're going to like really, it's a competition, it's a friendly competition, but this is not that. This is like strictly
like show your chops one up each other or whatever. Yeah. But
right. And it's like, there's some guys that like, if they were to do the jam, like I would try to show up a little bit more. Like guys that I play, like Leland. Like if Leland ever comes by the jam, it's like I'm going to be putting my A game on, because I know he can play. But it's still like part of it is like we just want to build a community. And that's what the Jazz Jam is. We're really focusing on, is getting people up there who are just letting them be comfortable, letting them learn. You'll see me like yelling out directions or like explaining how to, like, what are we doing? Like if somebody on the bandstand is like, okay, what do I do now? I'll just explain to them rather than looking at them like, what do you think we're doing? We're up here playing tunes. Play something. I don't know. Put the horn in your mouth. I'm not going to yell at people like that. So that's what we want to do with the jam. It's just real community, real effort like that. People come in first Sunday of every month, 5:30 to 8. Bring your horn, bring your voice, and just come play with us. That's awesome. What we want.
And can you talk a little bit about some of the open mic open mics that you go to, and just kind of the open mic scene in Rhode Island from your experience?
So that was actually one of the first things I did when I was first writing the material, when I was first writing the singer-songwriter material. Is like I didn't have anywhere to play, and I didn't have kind of the stomach to just get up, and I just couldn't book anything. And when we were living in Newport, there was this thing at the place called the Parlor. Bill Bartholomew actually used to run it with Dave Flamin and Randy Robbins. I think all of them kind of like rotated in and out running that, the 200 open mic.
Yeah.
And so I went to that, and that was my first taste of like sitting in, and it was just like, oh my, I just like, oh yeah, you can do this. They gave me the space, and I got actually some pretty decent feedback of like people liked what I was doing, and it just kept me going. And I would go to like a couple of open mics, but I never really got into it. And then when the shutdown happened, when the pandemic closed everything down, I just remember sitting there thinking like, when it opens up again, I'm just going to try to go to these things and try to go hard, because I I believe that I can play pretty well, but it's like, my thing is like, well, I gotta stay home and I gotta write, I gotta work on this stuff. I have so much stuff to do. I can't go out to these open mics, but I really realized that I needed to be part of the community in some way. If I was going to because I believe in the songs. I don't believe in my ability to play them sometimes, but I believe in the quality of the material. Mm-hmm. So it was like, but I wasn't getting any gigs and everything. I'm just like, you got to be a part of it more. Yeah. You just have to be. And we had before the shutdown, we did this big Tom Waits tribute where, we got a bunch of people in the community, and I was pretty stoked because I was running the house band, and I was like, okay, that's going to be my way to kind of get into the thing and then into the community a little bit. And then it shut down. And then it was like, I'm back to square one. Nobody knows really who I am. I kind of have intro with some people, but, so then I just decided when it opens up, I got to go to these open mics. The one at AS220 started up. I went to that. Adam Newell is doing a great job, and AS220 is just a really cool place to go. And they were very friendly. Everyone was like, it was hopping some nights. So I was playing to like rooms that were like half full, whereas I was normally playing to people like, that I brought with me to the gig. That was my audience usually. Yeah. And then the Parlor open mic started up again, and I had heard it was such a great community before the shutdown. So I went in, and it really is this like very specific community that like comes out every Wednesday. Mm-hmm. And Gregory at the Parlor has just like let that place become such a community oriented music venue. And Steve Donovan runs a great open mic, and Raza does awesome sound. I mean, it's just such a great place. That's hard not to like want to go back anyway, just to like be there and support people and listen. I haven't been able to go in the past few weeks because of just life stuff, but yeah, I love it, man. It's been such a boon to me in so many different ways of just meeting people and talking and, different gigs, kind of, you get different gigs from it or whatever, or you just get to make music around cool people.
Yeah. It's great that there are opportunities to go out and play and, be connected and to work on your stuff. I mean, it's a critical piece in just building our music community and people such as yourself, or there's a lot of people that have come out of the open mic scene that are just people that have, worked on some new things. And it's wonderful to see that going. And I hope that can continue and grow in Rhode Island. So,
yeah. No, absolutely.
But the last question I have for you, Ben, is what would you say is your greatest music accomplishment to this point?
So in a fashion that is just so obvious, I'm going to do a couple quick ones because that's, of course, what I would pick to do rather than just give you a simple answer, James. My first biggest accomplishment, I would say the string quartet. I think that unlocked for me, that proved to me that I could be a serious professional musician if I actually gave it a try, if I actually put effort into it and believed and just followed what I heard. I could accomplish. I hesitate to say this because it sounds really, I'm sure I'm going to sound kind of like an asshole, but I accomplished something that I don't think a lot of other people could with that, just in terms of its quality, with its, not that they couldn't, but it's like just that they wouldn't. Like it was something totally unique to me in a professional level that I just never thought that I would be able to do. I would say that maybe another one is like that Tom Waits show I mentioned. I have such a deep, profound love for him and his music. And we wanted to go out. I had never done a show really that was that big. And Chrissy Stewart, I got together with her and we just planned it. And I came up with the concept. I had wanted to do it for a long time. I was like, we should just do a Tom Waits tribute show and just like go like full bore, like pedal to the metal, like balls to the wall, just like do it as you wanted to do it. And it took months of planning and like people to be down, but we sold out Goodwill Engine Company, and I got to pay tribute to Tom Waits, this guy who's so inspiring and so complete in my life, and got a room full of people to scream one of his songs at the end of the night, which is so cool. And I would say the greatest accomplishment that I ever had to music to date is this album that I refuse to really ever talk about, the one we recorded at Big Nice that people haven't heard yet. I hesitate to talk about it only because I'm releasing other stuff. I don't want that stuff to sound like I don't love that music. I love everything that I've produced because I put a lot of myself into it. But the record that we did at Big Nice is just so like when I was recording the jazz album, the last track on the jazz album is this one called Untitled Folk Melody. And it's a song that when we were playing it, it's simple, but it just felt really good. And I listened to it after, and the first time I listened to it, I just started crying because I finally said what I wanted to say in a song, the way I wanted to say it via jazz, like everything about how we played the tune, my solo, it was exactly how I've always wanted to be heard. And so it was so affecting. And this album that we recorded at Big Nice is a way I've wanted to express myself in music, that it's like, oh yeah, you don't do like a weird voice over that. Don't like elongate these words. Don't, I took everything that I thought wouldn't work, but I knew would work. Mm-hmm. And we put it in an album. It's just like, it is exactly the music that I heard it completely. All the 9 songs were recorded. I heard them in my mind as I wanted them to go. And they came out better, and they came out exactly like I wanted them to be, but they came out better than I wanted them to be. I've said something, a complete thought. I've written, it is like my symphony right now. And it was just and the guys I have on it, just the way they played and the way that Brad engineered it and the whole vibe of it. I told the guys when we started out that like if we wanted to, we could make something great with this, because I just had such belief and faith in the songs. And if we just had to prove to ourselves that we could be great. And I know it's my own material, but we were great. And it is exactly everything that I have always wanted to say in music. And I was able to actually say it. And it's awesome. I can't. Yeah. And to have that and to be able to listen to it now.
Yeah.
And to be like, everything that I had in here that I thought was wrong, or that I thought was silly, or that I thought was not good, anything that I wanted to say that I thought was just going to be laughable and no one would understand, I fucking said it. And and we said it well, and it is complete. And it's just I'm in amazement of the guys that let me do this. It was, I don't know. I know I'm rambling now, but it's that, man. That's
cool.
It's complete.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you were able to make that. I mean, I think that is the ultimate of a musician, and something that I've been really focusing on is just really making music that I want to listen to, and not, again, it's something that is like a selfish type thing, but maybe I guess it is, but I just like, it doesn't need to go beyond that. I can get really wrapped up in so many other numbers and, what a certain person thinks. But if I think it's good, if it's like making an album that I want to listen to is kind of the goal, So, I really love hearing that from you. I personally can't wait to hear it. It's a very big tease because I don't even know when that one is coming out. That's pretty awesome.
I'm thinking December. We're still working on. I'm still working on editing the novella with this woman Claudia is helping me edit the words because I wrote them all. I'd wake up before work and I would work on it like every day at like 5 a.m. for like an hour and a half before work for a couple of weeks. And I would just like try to grind it out. And so she's making it sound like actual like prose rather than it was good, but it's like she's doing a really good number on it. Cool. We're working on the mixes. I got to get, pictures and stuff. I have great ideas that expound like surprises for the album that are beyond what I've detailed here, but a little taste of what's to come. Yeah.
But no, that's cool. And definitely look forward to checking that out and reconnecting with you on that. But Ben, thanks again for your time. It was really cool to learn a little bit more. I mean, you're just a very expansive artist as you've all heard. So getting to understand a little bit more about that and share that with people really means a lot. So thank you, Ben.
Dude, I'm obsessed with this podcast. I love it. I love what you do, man. I love how you do it. And I am just so incredibly grateful to be a small part of it. Thank you so much, James. I really, truly appreciate it.